Hey babies, hey babies, hey babies. Hi everyone. Happy Wednesday, everyone. How's everybody doing today? What's up, Callow? How are you?
What's going on? Less sore today. Less sore today.
Oh,
I'll take
very
that.
good.
Take that as a
Yes.
win today.
Yeah, you are just a few days removed from marathon number 2 over the last, what, 7, 8 months, something like that?
Uh, Funny. I had to look into it. I ran Marine Corps October 27th. This one was April 27th. It was
Yeah.
exactly 6 months to the day of the last one. So yeah. So 2 and 6 months.
Let's see. I'll tell you for tomorrow. I think the show's going to be audio only, and I'm going to talk to you off the air about all this because I'm going to Greenville, South Carolina for a day to meet with a group called Green Gridiron that makes helmets.
Yep.
Okay, mainly, and they work with the NFL and they work with colleges and they also do personalized ones. And they're going to make me an Empire Media helmet to come down like a full on, like real deal, $1,000 helmet and to show me the process to do a video with me. And then obviously they want to talk about the Commanders. So it's a partnership that I'm working on with Empire with them. And I think it's going to be a really cool day. So I'm just warning you, audio only, but I think the visuals of this, when I'm done, are going to be really cool. So I'm going to tell you how helmets are made. So I'm actually like, I know that's nerd out. You might like this, but like a full nerd out. But I'm like, I'm going to see how full on real NFL collegiate helmets are made piece by piece and how they do personalized ones, which, as you might imagine, might be very popular for any number of occasions, reasons, companies. And they're going to make me an Empire Media helmet. So I'm pumped. I'm pumped about this. That's why I'm going away tomorrow for a day.
No, I am. I am a gear nerd, as you know.
Yeah.
So that is something I'm interested in. It is one thing I don't own is a game used helmet. So I mean, that's
Yeah.
something that's been on my radar. They are very expensive. Like
Yes.
people that are like just wondering about it, they are usually thousands upon thousands of dollars because players only wear one or two all year, and you get them chipped up, whatever. They look very nice. So I am very interested in that because I want to know what the personalization process is for that.
Yes. And all goes well. You'll see the giant helmet back here if you're watching this on YouTube on Friday. That would be the hope, is what's going to happen. So we're going to figure out tomorrow, probably just be radio audio only. You won't see anything tomorrow because I'm going to be in a hotel room and that's going to look dumb. So, all right. So we'll get to that, all that stuff. All right. Let's get to some of the news. Number one, the Commanders got a new kicker, Matt Gay, who has been on a few different teams, but over the last couple of years was with the Colts. Actually got a pretty decent sized contract from Indianapolis a couple of years ago. Then they brought in competition. Gay's big flaw over the last couple of years is inaccuracies from 50 plus. He's been money from inside 50 and in for a number of years now, almost practically automatic. But outside of 50, I think the number was 3 for 9 a year ago. A year before that, again, like less than 50%. So the range isn't quite there. I will say this, like Joey Sly was here a couple of years ago. Joey Sly's range was really the biggest knock on him. And that got better actually over time. So that's the hope here. And I think this is also another signal. I did believe that Washington was seriously considering taking a kicker late in the draft to either compete with Zane Gonzalez or just, probably compete with if it's a rookie for sure, which is why I think the corresponding move of cutting Zane Gonzalez and bringing in Matt Gay is because this is a veteran who's been around the block. They probably, trust that this is going to be fine. I thought it was possible their 7th round pick or an undrafted free agent, if it got to that point, was going to be signed here. Most likely the University of Miami kicker who ended up going in the 6th or 7th round to New England. That's actually the second time in a few years they picked a kicker. Remember, they took the Maryland kicker a couple of years ago, and then he got into a competition. And I remember last summer when Sly was with New England and the Maryland kicker was with New England, and that was our 3rd preseason game. I went, one of those guys up might as well just stay here and not even go back because we're going to need a kicker to compete. And then obviously we had all the things that happened throughout the year at kicker. I'm not surprised this happened, but it does signal to me. Matt Gay was released a couple weeks ago that they were waiting through the draft to see what would happen. And I don't know that the University of Miami kicker is the one that they would have either drafted or signed as an undrafted free agent. But it seems to be that way because he was selected. I know that there was some reported interest in him. And then once he went to New England, now the Commanders had to think about what do they want to do. And they gave some real guaranteed money to Matt Gay. So he's the new kicker here.
Yeah, I had the same reaction as you, where it was, they might have drafted somebody and made this move corresponding then or in a competition, and they did not. They end up going with Gay. What I will say about this, too, is, look, you take what you can get in terms of how consistent the guy is. If it's within 50, it seems like the guy's pretty money. And you know what? You take that, especially off of, even one of the biggest wins of the season last year, beating Tampa Bay. Zane's kick doinked off, the inside of the crossbar. So, or the goalpost. So, I will say this. I think they're just trying to say, hey, this is an improvement. This is a pro. And, hey, this offense is really good, too. Hopefully, we're not kicking, too many field goals within that range anyways. That would be the hope here, too, is that, hey, at least you know what you're dealing with. Or maybe this makes Dan Quinn and Cliff Kingsbury's life a little bit easier. Hey, we're definitely going to go for it on 4th down. He can't make it past 50 yards. At least at the very least, that chart is now out for this.
Yeah, they'll obviously have to make decisions on that, but this is a team that went for it on 4th down more than anybody else in the NFL a year ago. This is a team that ran more plays up tempo than anybody else in the NFL. I'll be interested to see strategically if they think a little bit differently about it, but I don't know why they would. So in that range, if it's not 4th and 8, it seems like they're more inclined. Anything 4th and 3 or in seems like they're going to be aggressive, and I don't know why they would stop being that way. So if it's on the cusp, I don't know that we'll be answering that question very often, but 4th and 10 or a 50-yard field goal, I think they're kicking every day of the week just because, unless they have to go for it because the score dictates they have to go for it. So we'll see how it works out. And again, I'll just reiterate, Joey Sly's big knock, through his career when he came here was range, post 50 yards. And that actually got better. So I was mildly surprised they didn't bring him back last year, and he ended up going somewhere else. Obviously, it was a new staff and everything. And then kicker just became bane of their existence throughout the entire year. It was just one thing after another. Either misses. Austin Seibert, who broke a record in his first game with the team kicking 7 field goals, to the Dallas game would have been tied at. He made an extra point, missed 2 of them in that game. I mean, they had the highs and lows of the kicker, and then, God decided to bless us in the Tampa Bay game because Zane Gonzalez very easily could have missed that. I mean, that was hit wrong and it hit the post on the right side. So fortunately, but now we got a kicker here who's been around the block. He's a veteran. Inside 50 has been money. So hopefully that will at least continue here and we can move on. Next is this. I don't even think it's even in question that an edge rusher is probably being brought in here. Will it be to the degree of a name like Zadarius Smith or Von Miller? Will it be maybe a name, that's not as high profile as those two? That may come down to money. I mean, if I'm Von Miller or I'm Zadarius Smith, I'm not taking some minor baseline deal with a lot of incentives attached to it, which is probably why they haven't signed with anybody. This is typical at certain position groups that are premium position groups that make a lot of money. If they don't get the right deal in the first wave of free agency, they wait because after the draft, then the teams who have a definitive need have to think differently about what they're going to do with them. So I don't have a lean on what the name is, but I'd be very surprised if someone of this level specialty is it by this team, whether it's over the next few weeks, months, whatever. But, this team likes to have the people that they want on their team in the spring. So I think they will address this before full OTAs post the rookie minicamp happens.
Yeah, Zadarius Smith's actually one of the ones that's surprising to me. He was traded midseason and was okay. I didn't think he was bad by any means. That was one where I'm shocked that he just hasn't been picked up somewhere, but I get it. He's on that 2nd tier, 3rd tier of free agents. He's the one that screams out to me that should be a target for them. Von Miller, I'm probably staying away from. I don't know what is going on with him off the field too. This team has shied away from that a little bit. So
age and injuries too. Injuries with him. I mean, you have to take all of that into account with any injuries in recent years too.
Yeah, absolutely. So I don't, they're going to get one of these veterans in here. And same thing, I think as a unit, we've talked about it. They've revamped it as a whole entire defensive line, not just one position of defensive tackle or defensive end. They're kind of trying to supplement, can we just get by with this amount of bodies? And we're going to see if that works out for them. And they probably just need one more to be the solid starter. And that's it.
Yeah. So I think this also, it just blatantly acknowledges they felt like they had a lot of holes too, because a screaming need was this position, and yet they didn't draft anybody at it. And this was a position that everybody said was very deep heading into the draft. They could have easily taken one at 29. They chose not to. I think some of the ones they probably liked were gone by the time they got around to the end of the second round, but that's the choice that they made. And they had a lot of things that they needed to fill. So I think that this just kind of openly acknowledges, by signing a kicker a couple days after the draft is over, you're saying you knew you needed one, and it was possible you were going to either address it in the draft or hopefully undrafted free agent. Like, that would have even been better. Had the Miami kicker made it, out of the draft and not been drafted by anybody, I think Washington probably would have made an offer to him to try to get him. I think a couple of teams would have, but I think they would have made an offer to get him. Sure, once you get past the second round, unless you love somebody, there's no necessity to go after anybody in particular at any particular position. I think you just go for people that you think are going to help you. But it's very telling that at the top of the draft, they didn't do this, or they didn't feel like they had to do this. And Lance Newmark said this at the press conference after day 3, where the list of people available at that position instructed them that they do not have to go after an edge rusher unless they love them. So I expect them to sign somebody, but I just don't know who the name is or to what level. Like, are we going to get somebody who is of a namesake like Zadarius Smith? Or is it going to be someone who doesn't really move the needle that way, but they think could be just as effective? The 7 to 10 rotational sack player that they need here.
Yeah, no, I'll be very interested to see. He's also going to kind of tell us what the rest of the defensive line or the rest of that depth chart is going to look like as well, of terms of snap counts, who's actually going to play, who actually is going to be a contributor as well. So that's where I've kind of landed on this one too, is if it is one of those bigger names, those veteran names, that means they're going to get a good chunk of playing time, over half the snaps most likely, and then they're going to have to figure out how to supplement everyone else. So, yeah, I mean, they have to make one more move. They can't just go in with this position group the way it is. Like, it's assumed they've got to sign one of these guys.
Yes, and I don't think it's someone, and this is probably goes into the draft strategy too. If they had drafted a young edge rusher, it would have made a tremendous amount of sense. It's a void. It's someone they need to develop. But I had kind of landed on going into the draft that the people that they're going to take at the top, maybe not in the middle or the end, but the people they're going to take at the top, they want to know that they're going to be starters, or at least that's the plan. Put them in there. They believe they can win right now. And because they believe they can win right now, they're going to go after players that they feel like can help them win literally right now. That could be an edge rusher, but it was of the positions they took, least likely to be an edge rusher. Like, them taking offensive lineman made a lot of sense. It's going to be someone who's probably, hopefully, going to be a starter, whether it was interior or exterior, and they took a tackle. Picking a corner, like, you could make a case they didn't definitively need it, but taking a specific outside corner, they do. The other 3 starters, headlined by Sanders really are people they would prefer to play on the inside. They can play on the outside, but would prefer that. Best case scenario, Amos is ahead of the curve. He's an outside starter with Lattimore. Sanders still moves to the inside, and you've got rotational pieces with Jones and Igbenogany. Jones to the outside or inside if necessary. That's if all goes well. Or Jones starts and Amos is his primary backup on the outside. If Lattimore can't stay healthy for 17 games, you've got the clear cut. This is the person who's going to be the outside corner, is going to come in. So it was very purposeful what they did. Edge rusher didn't actually fit that unless they were going to land Abdul Carter, who was like obviously going to walk in and be an upgrade and a starter and someone who's going to play the majority of downs on most series. I think they came to the conclusion that's not who any of these people are at 29. And while we might want one and like one and think we can develop one, we're trying to win right now. We're not trying to find somebody who's going to be a really good potential edge rusher 3 years from now.
Well, and like I would say too, it's spot on the value, right? Like Peter said out loud with Amos that he was a first round grade, that they would have picked him in the first round, possibly. So it also tells you there was not an edge rusher that overtook that in value as well. So I'm not surprised. Once again, this goes back to me saying, impact player. That they didn't think that there was an impact edge, or they think these two could impact the roster more. And I would tend to agree with them that they could impact the roster more than whatever edge rusher they would have picked.
All right, so let's go through some draft grades. And I want to do today the NFC East. And I'll start really with the Commanders because like everybody's got their opinions of it. And I've read a number that kind of vary what people think. Most of them look at the players they got and seem to believe that they've done pretty well here and addressed obvious needs. It's hard not to like Connerly, who I think everyone kind of agrees could have gone a lot higher, just didn't. And then with Amos, there seems to be a pretty good consensus that they got a very good prospect. The draft grade seems to vary, not based on who they took, but their use of their assets this year to get trades done, and therefore a small draft class. So now that it's done, I'm seeing this vary, like from a B minus up to, B plus to A. No one wants to give them A plus because they only have a 5-man draft class, and to the point of they don't really have an edge rusher. Well, they couldn't address everything because they chose to trade away some of the assets, and that's kind of limited them on the amount of players that they have coming in. So now that what's done is done, they used the assets that they did to get Tunsil and Debo, and they ended up with just a 5-man draft class. Whether you love it or not of what these people are, do you think they did well?
Yeah, I mean, I think for the 5 picks they had, yes. Like, I think you do factor in the players that they got. Like, I'm not a believer of, you say that they drafted Debo Samuel or drafted Laramie Tunsil, but I think you need to factor those are the players that they also added in. So you're telling me they got 2 starting offensive tackles. You're telling me they got a starting wide receiver opposite Terry McLaurin. You're then telling me they have a probably really second or third corner with Amos, and then 2 more offensive weapons. Yeah, I'm perfectly fine with that. Like, B plus sounds about right here for the class.
Yeah.
And if you want to add in the players that they traded for, yes, I think they did pretty well. And we were wondering, especially, I mean, I would say halfway through the season, we were already wondering, I wonder what Adam Peters is going to do with the team in the offseason, because do you want to hit that kind of, aggressive approach of trading some picks away to get good really fast? And I think he threaded that needle pretty well. He didn't trade the first or second round pick. Next year he did, but for the most part, he protected the top couple of picks, moved some other picks around from trades last year that happened. Overall, yes, I think they did very well. I say that B plus range is fine.
They still have their first round and second round pick next year. They traded a 3rd round pick for Laramie Tunsil. So they still have the top of the draft. And I'll say this too, like, they did try to get an asset back. They tried to trade John Allen. So they were trying to get one of the, like, it probably wouldn't have been a very high one, but they were trying to get something for him. They didn't. And then they ultimately, I think they just kind of did right by him. Honestly, they could have held on to him and waited through the draft and said, we're going to trade you when we trade you. And they chose not to do that. So they ended up doing what was the opposite of just saying, okay, we tried. We really wanted to get something for you. I think that there maybe was a possibility that he was going to be involved in the Debo trade in some way. Like, sounds like San Francisco was open to an idea like that, or, trading separately for him. Minnesota wisely just waited it out. Clearly they wanted him. And so that's where they tried to get one of them back. It just didn't work out to get anything back. And then Peters had talked about, they could have traded out of 29. They could have traded out of 61. It sounds like too. They chose not to do either one of those things because they believed in the guys they got. And again, at the top of the draft where they do have definitive needs, I agree with the sentiment. You just take the people that you want, especially if you think they're going to start, because you think you have a chance to win, but you acknowledge at the same time that your roster is a little less complete than Philadelphia's. You have to take players. You can't fiddle around and go, well, let's just do this no, not this year. Maybe next year, but definitively not this year.
No, exactly right. This is where, like, this is a full trust the process kind of with the organization. It's, well, you heard me say I thought they were trading down since February. Well, they didn't. But he did say they could have in both of those picks, but they liked both of those players. I'm fine with that. Like, if you're going to tell me that you had those offers, but you liked these players and you valued them a little bit more, I'm perfectly okay with that. Like, you don't trade down just to trade down. Right? To do it.
That's right.
If you have players that you think are going to contribute right now, take them. Like, I have no problem with that. So yeah, I'm with the organization and just trust the process. And if it's only 5 players, it's 5 players.
Yeah, you have 2 choices here, and most teams are very smart this way, and they don't overpay any longer because they all have these charts, and everyone's kind of got this, like, because everyone's scared. everyone is scared of perception, that they don't want to overpay, because if they overpay, then if the thing doesn't work out, they have to live with that decision the rest of their lives. And they've built these charts, value charts. And so they use these value charts. So everybody's kind of on the same page about it. If you get someone to come along who does offer you more just to make the deal happen, and it's just in the best interest of the team, well, then I think you make an exception in that case. But assuming that whatever was offered for the picks that they ended up not trading out of was in line with industry standard these days, they just agreed that it's just better off that they just stay where they are. And it's hard for me to argue with it. They're sitting here saying two things at once. We know our roster needs to be improved. We know in significant places it needs to be improved. Premium positions, tackle, corner, edge rusher, like expensive premium positions. We need to get better here, but we think we can win with what we have anyway. So you have to get those improvements if you really think you're going to win. And so I think they went in that direction. I mentioned Philly. Here's what their draft looked like. And this is like, they went, I'm not surprised here early, their first 5 picks of the 9 that they had, because Howie's, this is amazing. Super Bowl champion, loaded up on picks. They've been masterful in the draft, not only in who they've selected, but just the amount of players. I heard a couple people say, I thought Philadelphia would trade out some of these assets, either for later assets next year, whatever, because all these guys can't make the team. That they were like, they're too good. They can't all make the team. No one wants to draft people that they're either going to cut, or put on a practice squad. So they thought that they would trade out, and maybe they just weren't able to do anything like that. But their first 5 picks were all on defense. They might have gotten a steal again in Jahad Campbell. It's a distinct possibility that they did. They've gotten it really with what looks like Nolan Smith, Nakobe Dean, like especially Smith, who turned into a very good, undersized but very effective edge rusher. I'm not surprised they went on defense. Look at their offense right now. Where's the hole, other than, I guess you could argue their tight end isn't as strong as as maybe it was a couple of years ago when Goddard was in his prime. But outside of that, best offensive line in football. Hurts is terrific. Saquon's the best in the business. Their receivers are outstanding. Maybe they don't have the depth that they want, but their top 2 are as good as any duo you could ask for in the NFL. Like, on defense, they lost Josh Sweat. They lost Milton Williams. They let C.J. Gardner-Johnson go. That is a spot that they need to fortify. I'm not surprised they did what they did. And then they took a flyer on Kyle McCord and said, I know they like this Tanner McKee guy as a backup, but McCord, this is a perfect late round, no risk, high reward. He was really, really good at Syracuse after he transferred out from Ohio State. They may develop somebody over the next couple of years. And if that happens, and again, it's a total flyer, but if one of those types of happens, then it gives you options when Hurts either gets too injured, a little bit older, they don't want to pay him anymore. So I think their draft was spot on, honestly.
No, and it's also, it's indicative of what their strategy is straight up, right? Like, they had to let pieces on the defensive side of the ball go because they're already paying everyone on offense. Like, that offensive line is getting paid, right? They've handed out 2 extensions to them. Both wide receivers are paid. Hurts is paid. Barkley was paid, and then he got repaid after the Super Bowl. This is going to be their MO the whole way. Basically draft and replace on defense because the offense is already set. So yeah, A+ for them. I mean, it's because they're in such a good position that they are allowed to go ahead and take 5 defensive players to start things off.
The Cowboys draft, I think it's very actually similar to Washington's at the top, where there were just very specific needs that were addressed. And they got, arguably, at the interior offensive line position, maybe best on the board. They believe that because they took, Tyler Booker and they took him above any other interior offensive lineman. So they believe that they got the best at the position. This is someone I think I was talking about last week before the draft. And I said, if that guy's available at 29, I think you're running to the podium. I mean, he's a plug-in left guard starter for you. And obviously he wasn't. He was taken much higher. Then in the second round, they went and got an edge. Remember, Dorrance Armstrong's here now. DeMarcus Lawrence is now in Seattle. Like, it is a clear need. All of a sudden, it's a need for them opposite of Micah Parsons, who I assume they're going to pay. They got the BC guy. He was very highly rated. He was someone that a lot of people believed was going to go in the first round. He was someone that was listed in mock drafts for Washington for a number of months late if he were to get there. So They get that. Then they go corner. They need corner. Again, Trayvon Diggs keeps getting injured. The opposite side became a huge liability, especially for them late in the season. They've seen some attrition of people that they've lost. So I actually think the Cowboys draft is a lot like Washington's, that they addressed distinct, utter needs and got guys that might start immediately for them. So I actually think they're kind of akin to one another.
So I will say, like, solid draft for them, but it was really funny that once again Jerry was like, "Oh, we're gonna, do something big," and they didn't, but they still had a solid draft. I didn't understand why he had to say that. Like,
I don't even know what he was referring to, actually. Like trade what, actually?
I don't know. Like, my gut was saying, "Oh, they might trade up to get Genty," because that's just a Cowboys move, right?
Okay.
Trade a bunch of picks to go get the running back. They don't mess around with their skill position guys, but clearly that didn't happen. So I don't understand why Jerry had to say that. All in all, though, they had a solid draft. He just put bigger expectations on it than he needed to. It's such a Jerry thing to do.
Yeah. I think like they're filling needs here.
Sure.
And they're not that far removed from having really good records. I've seen the clips of Dak, who looked like he lost a lot of weight. Looks like he's in really good shape. Say what you want about him, because he's like the new Eli or Flacco of, is he elite? They have this conversation with him. I think he's a really, really, when healthy, very, very good high-level NFL quarterback. He's not Mahomes, he's not Allen, he's not Lamar, but he's very, very, very good. So I buy that if they can fill a lot of these holes that they've had, that they're better than they were a year ago. But they don't feel kind of as a team kind of coordinated. They're kind of toggling between this idea of keep the band together, but let a lot of people go. The coaching decision was really odd to me. And that kind of the whole thing feels a little bit off, but I do like what they did in the draft. I think they addressed things they definitively needed.
No, I agree. It was not flashy, but it was good enough, is what I would say.
Last one's the Giants. They're hoping they just made a franchise shift. They were in the funniest position of all time, which is, do you just take Abdul Carter, who is clearly and not even close the best player on the board and might be the best defensive player on the board? And why wouldn't you take someone like that? And you're the one team in the NFL that doesn't need this position. I think this means Kayvon Thibodeau's days are numbered there. And honestly, if I were him in his representation, I would probably want to trade, like sooner rather than later. Carter's going to walk in. Of course, he's going to be a starter. You've already paid Burns, and Burns has been way more consistently effective than Thibodeau has been in his career, which is why he got paid the way he got paid. I mean, if I'm Thibodeau, the agents are probably knocking on the door going, what's my future here? Then they trade back in for Jackson Dart. This is, to me, was the second best quarterback in the draft. So I'm not surprised someone went in the end of the first round and got him. I'm not surprised at all. I actually thought it was possible that New Orleans would have selected him earlier, or Pittsburgh would have selected him earlier. They chose not to. And so they get him. This is an odd mix. I'd be concerned if I'm him. They already have Russ and Jameis. Obviously, the plan is to start Russ this year. It means Dart's working underneath of that with a staff that is very much on the hot seat. And is the offense that was run under Daniel Jones going to be changed so dramatically this year to fit him as opposed to fit Russ? It just feels all off. But I know that they're trying to sell themselves. We do have our quarterback in the future, franchise quarterback. There's a lot of, cool karma with them, with Ole Miss and Eli and all that stuff. And they believe they got the best player in the draft, at least on the defensive side of the ball, and arguably the best player overall selected. So, they're probably sitting there going, we can tell ourselves we think we just had a franchise-changing thing. We got a quarterback. We got an all-star, all-pro caliber defensive end. What's wrong with that?
No, I mean, look, this is a little bit like, remember the Texans did it a couple years ago with Stroud and Anderson, and they traded back up to get basically brand new offensive and defensive captains. I don't mind going with the shift, but I'll say, though, I don't think this was the quarterback class to do it with. I've said it a million times. When you don't have the kind of franchise-changing guys up top, I'm not willing to roll the dice anymore on some of these guys that you have to trade in to the end of the first round. Dart, I just don't see it either. Like, I don't know. I think he earned his way into a first-round grade, second-round grade, and then other teams just said, well, if we need a quarterback, that's the next one we get. And the Giants decided to be that team. Good luck. I mean, I will say this, though, over anything. that with him sitting behind Russ and Jameis, he's going to do just that, sit. And so we have seen it that when guys sit for a while, they do have a better chance really to, produce and shine a little bit more than when they're thrown in there. I mean, you look at what the Packers did for years with Rodgers and then with Jordan Love. Like, they came out and not only did they look solid at first, they then got pretty good, right? Like Jordan Love, it didn't happen last year, but 2 years ago, looked like an MVP candidate for half the season.
He also did that with stable coaching in front of him. I mean, that's the organizational part of this that doesn't make a lot of sense. We all know that if they go 5-12 this year, that there's going to be a lot of heat on them to make this change, which means then the ownership would have to decide, do we run it back again when every proof says this is not the right group running this thing. And yet at the same time, but you let them pick the quarterback of the future. How do you not let them see it through? So I just say organizationally, I don't know what their shared vision is at this point.
No, I would agree 100% on that one. And the other part about this too is, let's say the Giants are bad and let's say they do, have a 2-6 record 8 games in. Well, nobody's going to be clamoring for Jameis. They're going to be clamoring for Dart. So, that's the other side of this, too, that I always find kind of funny of he's going to sit behind these two guys. Well, the public perception is going to be go to the rookie once the season is lost anyways. So, there's a lot of questions about it. Taking Carter, though, I will say, Carter was the best value pick of the draft. He's going to be the best defensive player in the draft, and they got him, 3rd overall.
100%. It was impossible not to take him. You're either trading out or you're taking him. So I don't blame them for that position, even though they had the players that they have there. And I think largely, and we'll do this more as the season, as we get closer to the season, I like what they've done on defense in the offseason, in the draft, and in free agency. Personnel-wise, on paper, they have a very formidable group that's going to walk out onto the field. Is that enough to be better than Washington and Philadelphia in their own division? It's going to be a hard sell to me, especially with what they have on offense. And therefore, because of the division they're in, them having a really good record, they're playing the same teams we are, AFC West, NFC North. Good luck. This feels like the Patriots a little bit from a year ago where, they may defensively be very competitive for a while, but if their offense just can't score, they're just not going to win enough games. So we'll just have to see. All right, let me take a quick break. Very much the show is ESPN 630 of Sports Capital. All right, welcome back. I think one of the surprises of the draft was the Steelers did not take a quarterback. I think people expected that Shedeur Sanders, at least initially, wouldn't get past them. If he got past New Orleans, he wouldn't get past them. And then once we got to the bottom of the draft, unless someone was going to take him as a backup to an entrenched starter, the wait was going to begin. I don't think anyone thought it would go on as long as it did, but it started that way. And clearly, look, Pittsburgh's not obligated to take him in the same way that Cleveland wasn't obligated to take him or New Orleans wasn't obligated. It's just people looked at it and were like, well, he's going to land somewhere because he's a good prospect and these teams don't have a quarterback. Why don't they take him? That doesn't mean they liked him, right? That doesn't mean they liked him or, and I mean on the field more than anything. I think the off the field stuff is a touch overrated in this story. I think it's all about on the field. My point yesterday, even talking about it with you, was there was a lot of people who had a lot of red flags about Caleb Williams. He still went number 1 overall. And if the Bears had decided they didn't want to make that pick because they were uncomfortable with him, there had been a line out the door to trade to get to that point to take him because the on-field talent is just so overwhelming. You're going to, you will look past a lot of stuff. That's not the case with Shedeur. I think this is a very simple thing. No one thinks he's that. He might become that, but no one thinks he's that, which is why he didn't go in the first round or really a couple of other rounds. But by Pittsburgh not taking one and Mason Rudolph basically being the only quarterback on the roster, we're back on Aaron Rodgers' watch. And, I think the leverage has now shifted definitively to him to basically tell them because they're in a desperate mode. So my guess is this now. Rodgers is going to have to tell them one way or the other, and they're going to put probably privately a timeline on this. And if he says he doesn't want to do it or he can't make his mind up, they're the ones that are going to call Atlanta to get Kirk Cousins. That's what I think is going to happen.
No, that's exactly what's probably going to happen here. And with the Steelers not taking quarterback, I'm okay with that. Like I just said last segment about how the Giants, I didn't really like any quarterbacks outside of Ward. And even Ward, is Ward going to be worthy of the number 1 overall pick? We'll see.
We'll see.
But I was okay with this with Pittsburgh. Like they didn't marry themselves to a first-round quarterback or Shedeur or, any of the other guys, mainly probably because they just didn't like, drafting one this year. I was okay with this. I don't think you force it, and then you go and have to play this dance for then 2 or 3 years of whether a guy is in or a guy is not, and getting a new offensive coordinator. It just sets so many dominoes in motion that if you didn't like a guy enough, don't take him. And I was okay with this. So yeah, it does now go down to Rodgers. I think it's either Pittsburgh or bust for Rodgers. I don't think he's going anywhere else. I don't think anyone wants to kind of deal with him unless he's going to be the starter. And I don't know who else that person is. And yeah, with Cousins, I think we kind of expected maybe some kind of rumblings during the draft of somebody making a move for him. That didn't happen. And Cousins, I don't know if you read this. I think this was last week. He pulled the old, you got to deal with me. He showed up to the workouts. And you and I know Kirk knows how to negotiate better than anyone else. And so that's him going, I'm not going to cause any problems. I'm going to get my workout bonuses. I'm going to knock all of this out. This is your problem, not really my problem. You have to address it. And that's Kirk's the master of all of that. So
he is.
I would not be surprised if Pittsburgh does make the move for him.
He's been in uncomfortable negotiating positions his entire career. He's come out on the other side smelling like roses every single time, and he will here too. He's got the leverage. He's the one that has a guaranteed contract, right? Yep. So he's the one that tells them, you're going to have to figure this out with me. And he also genuinely is, I will show up to work. Yeah, I'm not going to cause a problem. You're not going to hear anything publicly from me. That's it. Yeah. The other thing, and I talked a lot about Shedeur yesterday, but the Browns, who I lauded on Friday and said, I actually like what they did, trading out, let Jacksonville have Travis Hunter. You don't really have a quarterback at this point. Get the extra assets. I think Hunter is going to be a very, very good NFL player, but I'm not sure that he's Malik Neighbors on offense or Pat Surtain on defense. So in that case, I think they did the right thing. And I actually felt like they were continually doing the right thing. Load up on some picks. You really got to eat it type of year or two with the Deshaun Watson contract to try to figure out how to get out of that, move on next year with only 1 year left. I think they're going to figure out a way to get out of it so that it limits the cap hit and lets them officially move on, but they're stuck here. Then they go and do this, and they go and draft 2 quarterbacks. And that's to me where it makes no sense. If you're going to take one of them, okay, but to take both of them sets them both up in some kind of UFC ring match between the two of them, where one, likely Shedeur, wins out and becomes the backup to Joe Flacco or Kenny Pickett. I don't like this. And if I'm Kevin Stefanski, I'm looking sideways at my front office going, why did you put me in a position like this where, especially if Shedeur wins this first battle and he gets to go up the ladder and move on to whatever the next cage match is that they're putting there for all of their quarterbacks, you're going to have people climbing up at me, constantly asking me about this, that, or the other thing with Shedeur. And honestly, I don't like that setup at all. And so I don't understand why. If they just took Shedeur, I get it. Taking both of them, to me, has set up some kind of undercard quarterback battle royale that I think is not wise at all.
I mean, I'm all right with this. They don't have a quarterback outside of, they don't have a quarterback. I'll just end it at that. Watson should be washed. He shouldn't play again. He might play next year, whatever. Flacco's the veteran. Screw it. Take 2 of them. I mean, if you don't have one, you might as well try to find one and take 2. I don't know. Is it the most
use 2 draft picks on one position that they know both of them or either won't be the future of the team? So I don't know which draft pick they wasted, but they wasted one of them here.
And I've made the argument that they should probably just tank for next year period anyway. So why not see if one of those quarterbacks works out? They're both going to play, right? There's no way one of them is going to play the entire time or Flacco's is going to play the entire time. I don't know. No matter what, it's a you-know-what sandwich. So I'm just saying at this, maybe take 2, just see if one works out. Maybe you get lucky.
Yeah. One other quick thing is it's getting too far away from the news cycle not to say something about it. I did see the clips from the Belichick interview.
Oh, my.
That he was on CBS Sunday Morning, okay, which is a magazine show, is not hard-hitting, okay? They do nice stories about people. This isn't 60 Minutes, okay? This is CBS Sunday Morning. Charles Osgood, a magazine show, sunny skies, calm music. You're going to be just entertained here. And it went completely sideways because his 20-something-year-old girlfriend was there the whole time and pulling full Yoko Ono and even interrupting the interview. And at times saying, we're not going to talk about certain things. And listen, I don't know how many times she did this, but there is a part of me that goes, she must have done it enough that they felt it necessary to show this, because they didn't have to show that. They could have ignored it and just in editing ignored that it happened and not mentioned that it happened. But because I think it happened so many times, I think they felt like that they just had to do something like this. And now I don't know what's up. Like, it's who's in charge here? And it just, like, it might be nothing short of she wants to keep their relationship private. It could just be as simple as that. And I don't blame her, if that's what the case is. But it doesn't look that way. And it looks like arguably the greatest coach in the history of the sport is being controlled by his 20-something-year-old girlfriend. It just, as far as the old optics bad look goes, this one is up there, really up there.
Well, and like, here's the other thing too. Let's just, I'm not gonna feed into the internet rumors of how they met, because that's running wild these days. But
and I don't care. Like, I honestly don't care.
But here's the thing. Between you and me, when we've talked about sports over the years many times, we always like to talk about the PR aspect of it. Okay, so let me just take a step back here. On social media, it was known that they met on a plane. She was studying for like her philosophy degree or something, and she had a book, and Bill signed the book. That has always been the story of how they met. Yet when they're in this magazine show, he asks, how did you guys meet? And she goes, we're not going to go there. Well, wait a minute. You've already established on other platforms how you met, yet now you don't want to talk about it. Now I have questions. Like, this is PR 101. If she was a real, like, person that could understand the game a little bit, you would have talked about that going into it a little bit. So you and I know how this works. When you are not telling the truth, you flub up a couple of times here. This is where I have questions on. So you guys didn't meet on that plane, or
sure,
but no matter what, all of a sudden you guys aren't on the same page, that you don't trust him to say how you guys met. That's where it's weird.
I will say this though. Okay. This particular show, it's a magazine show, 100% pitched them. We're doing a football story here about you going to North Carolina, legendary NFL coach going to North Carolina, how that transition is going. They're not doing a story based on his relationship, or they weren't pitched that way. It's why he's sitting there. If they called him and said, we want to do a story about your relationship, they would say no. But if they say, we want to do a football story about your transition from the NFL to North Carolina and how that's going to go this year, he might say yes, and he did. When the interview turns to this about the relationship, that's basically they're saying, we didn't agree to do that. So in their defense, I think, like, they don't want to feel like the story isn't what it was pitched to them about. So I'll hear them out on that part.
But you would know, as someone that's interviewed a million people over the years, sometimes the interview takes you in a different direction. If she kept interrupting a million times and started to make it about themselves, you pivot to that, because apparently she wanted to be involved. You know what I mean?
Her sitting in the room made it worse. Like, interview with this guy, he doesn't answer any question he doesn't really want to answer. Had he just been in there alone and he asked about the relationship, he'd be like, I'm not talking about that.
Right.
End of story. Never would have made the story.
Yeah.
But her being in there actually made it worse. All right. Let me take a quick break. Very much show be at 6:30 Sports Capital. All right, welcome back. On the Caps, who can finish off Montreal tonight, get to the second round where they would face Carolina. Is that right? Is that set in stone? It's set in stone because they closed out their series. So the Hurricanes would be next. That would be a doozy if we get to that. I take nothing for granted in the NHL. I've watched this sport way too long. Go watch the Kings-Oilers series to go see what's going on right now. Things can flip on a dime. I don't feel like they will. I do think the Caps are going to finish them off tonight. I think Montreal's best chance to get back in the series was blown the other night in the third period up there. And I think the Capitals crowd, having seen how Montreal's crowd has been really, really, really into it, will be motivated to push this across the finish line. I expect a win tonight and end of series.
I expect them to win tonight as well. Canadians, if they were going to win this series, they were going to have to win that game 4 the way we saw it in the third period, right? They're on the ropes. The Caps are on the ropes in the third period. Tom Wilson has that bone-crunching hit, and it might have changed the entire series. It definitely changed that game, but it might have changed the entire series. I see this one ending tonight, too. Thompson looked okay the other night. I'm going to say he looked great. He had a couple good saves, but still, save percentage isn't great. So let's see how he plays tonight. And then once again, I still have to keep mentioning it. Alexi Protas traveled with them to Montreal, and he didn't play. Does he play tonight to maybe help finish him off?
No.
I don't know. I doubt it, but, I still think it's out there. So we'll see. I mean, but I do think they win tonight.
There is a little bit of the old Caps that are coming out of this group. Like, Wilson's become a missile again. Wilson's totally engaged. He's instigating with people. He's going after people. Even Ovi, and I know he, didn't do it. I don't think he did it purposefully, but he was in the way and took somebody out. And you can argue whether he did that on purpose. I think he was trying to get out of the way, but they called an interference on that. Anyway, you're seeing a little bit of the old juices coming out of these guys. And I like that part of it. Tom Wilson is the classic. You hate him unless he's on your team, which is why I love him. He's one of my favorite players of all time on this team. There's some classic Tom Wilson that's been coming out throughout this series that's helping them push this over the finish line too.
Well, and I think what's happening here too is they took those first couple games to figure out where they're all fitting in playoff hockey a little bit. Dylan Strome and Connor McMichael are not going to pick up that physical toll. Tom Wilson will pick up that ball and run with it, as we saw in game 4. So I think this is what's happening too. It's a little bit of a feeling out process. I think Ovi's part of that too. I think Ovi's going, you know what? I can score a goal here and there, and he scored 2 goals in the series, but he's also going, I think I can contribute physically.
Yes.
Let's go ahead and do it. And so, so I think it was a little bit of a feeling out process of what do we have to pick up and put down here for all of us to fit a little bit more? And I think Wilson and Ovi are the ones taking the flag and running with it at this point.
Yeah, I hope they win tonight. I think they're going to win tonight. We'll review it tomorrow. Bram watch the show, ESPN 630, the Sports Capital.